Marbury v. Madison is one of the most well-known and studied Supreme Court cases in American history. This court decision established judicial review, which allows the judicial branch to review and nullify the actions of legislative and executive branches, therefore exercising the separation of powers among the three branches.
Establishes that sovereignty remains in the United States and not within the individual states. This historic Supreme Court decision ruled that the Congress has a right, as implied in the necessary and proper clause in the Constitution, to create the second bank of the United States, but the state of Maryland did not have the power to tax the bank in an effort to stop the operation.
Roe v. Wade was a landmark Supreme Court case that discussed the issue of abortion. Jane Roe, a single pregnant woman, filed a case action lawsuit against Dallas County District Attorney Henry Wade in order to challenge the constitutionality of the Texas criminal abortion laws, which made aborting a fetus a felony, unless the woman's health was at risk.
Brown v. Board of Education was a monumental case for the civil rights movement and attaining racial equality. During the 1950s, a large amount of schools were segregated by race. This was the case in Topeka, Kansas, where Linda Brown, her sister, and other black students were denied access to nearby segregated white schools. The Topeka NAACP filed a case on behalf of a group of 13 parents and 20 children who believed their 14th Amendment rights were violated by the segregated school system. This action suit was named after one of the plaintiffs, Oliver Brown. This case was taken to the federal district court, but segregation was upheld because the court claimed all white and non-white students had similar buildings, transportation, curriculum, and accessibility. The case reached the Supreme Court, and the Browns insisted that segregated school would never be equal. The court decided that school segregation was unconstitutional because it violated the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment.
In the Supreme Court case Gideon v. Wainwright, a Florida man, Clarence Earl Gideon, was arrested after being spotted near a burglary scene and was unable to afford a lawyer to represent him in court. When he asked the Florida Circuit Court judge to appoint a lawyer for him, he was denied and forced to represent himself. Gideon did not defend himself in court and was found guilty and sentenced to a Florida state prison. Gideon pleaded for the U.S. Supreme Court to hear his case, which it agreed to and unanimously agreed that Gideon's rights were violated because the Sixth Amendment required state courts to appoint lawyers for defendants who could not afford counsel.
Miranda v. Arizona was the Supreme Court case that made the Miranda rights a customary practice among U.S. police officers. The case came about because of Ernesto Miranda, who was arrested for rape and kidnapping in Phoenix, but was not informed by the police of his Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights against self-incrimination or the assistance of a lawyer. The Supreme Court decided that the Arizona police did not follow the designated steps to inform Miranda that he had the right to remain silent and to be appointed by a lawyer if he could not afford one.
The Supreme Court case Gibbons v. Ogden determined that the federal government has sole power over interstate commerce. The case originated because of the state law that gave a New York steamship company a monopoly by allowing them to use the state's waterways for business. Aaron Ogden was one of the business investors who held a license under the monopoly, allowing him to access these waters. Another steamship trader, Thomas Gibbons, planned to use the same waters to do his business, but was denied access despite having a federal coasting license that had been issued by Congress. Gibbons sues Ogden, and the case went to the Supreme Court, which decided the Federal Commerce Clause took precedence over the state law.
Dred Scott v. Stanford was an important case in the fight for equality and abolishment of slavery. The Supreme Court case involved Dred Scott, a slave who was purchased in Missouri and brought to Illinois, which was a free, non-slave state. The Supreme Court decided that Scott was not a citizen of the state and blacks cannot become citizens, nor do slaves become free when taken into free states.
The Supreme Court case Plessy v. Ferguson originated because of a Louisiana statute called the Separate Car Act that forced all rail companies in Louisiana to provide separate but equal accommodations for white and non-white passengers. Violation of the Car Act would result in a fine of $25 or 20 days in jail. In 1892, passenger Homer Plessy boarded a car that was designated for white passengers only. Although Plessy was only 1/8 black, he was told to move to the colored car, and when he refused in an act of disobedience, he was arrested and jailed. Plessy argued in state court that East Louisiana Railroad denied him of his 13th and 14th Amendment rights. Judge John Howard Ferguson presided over the case and ruled that Louisiana was to regulate railroad companies within state boundaries. Plessy took his case to the Supreme Court, which decided that racial segregation is constitutional under the separate but equal doctrine.
D.C. v. Heller was a landmark case in which the Supreme Court of the United States held that the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution protects an individual's right to possess a firearm for traditionally lawful purposes and federal enclaves such as self-defense within the home.
That's gross. Do a review. Which allows the judicial. Whore!
So you're just laughing for no reason. Still laughing. While you're laughing, how about you, shake it off by taking this into the kitchen. Natasha, breathe.
She doesn't breathe when she laughs. Look at her face; is turning blue.
Don't record this.
I am. Emily's got corned beef and cabbage waiting for her.
In that movie with. I
I
feel like
hate
we're.
this song.
Oh!
No, you're early.
Okay, so